Should you do your own work on your own bike? The answer might surprise you. I'll be back in a moment to tell you why. So the question is, should you work on your own bike? Meaning, do your own oil change, put in your own accessories, do your routine maintenance, things like that, versus taking it into an independent shop or the dealer? And the answer is, to quote Anthony Hopkins from a very famous movie, what one man can do, another can do. And that comes with a caveat or an asterisk. And that means if you have the tools, if you have the facilities, and you have the skill sets, why wouldn't you do it yourself? And while you're running through the various permutations, I'll tell you where I land on that. And that is, nobody has your best interests at heart more than you. And I don't mean to diminish the commitment or capability or capacity or compassion of your mechanic or your dealer or your dealership or your sales, depot, whatever you want to call it. But, you have your sense of self-preservation. And, you're taking that very seriously, either for yourself or your family, your kids, or what have you. And the guy making flat rate, I get paid X number of dollars for this job, whether I do it in 15 minutes or 15 hours, and I'm not laying blame on that person, guy or gal or whatever. It's a little different than somebody who's got an investment in, their satisfaction in the ride and their safety on the ride. So I'm coming to you with a number of decades, not years, but decades of experience when I say that I will try and do, outside of a warranty period, whatever I can do on my own. So why do I say it that way? So within the warranty period, there's certain things that are covered by an authorized or certified dealer, manufacturer, or whatever, where they will cover the repair, the maintenance, what have you. Outside of that, it's just, did you do it or not? So, let's just take, we're not casting aspersions on anybody's skill sets or anything. Let's say you are I hate to just categorize it this way, but weekend warrior. You bought a bike, regardless of what brand you bought, regardless of whatever you paid for it. You really don't care about maintaining it or anything like that. You just want to get out on a weekend and go for a ride once a month. And there are people that will bristle at that and make negative comments about that. And I tell those people to pack sand and move on, because that's what you want to do with the investment that you made. And that's good enough. And if you want to pay the dealer $45, $75, $125, $175 for an oil change, and that brings you peace of mind, then so be it. But if you're looking to either save money or ensure everything is done right, I'm here to tell you that you are oft times better outside of the warranty period doing it yourself. I have had vehicles come back, both four-wheel and two-wheel, from scheduled service intervals within the warranty period, where things haven't been torqued right, things haven't been done right, aftermarket parts have been used where factory components or parts were supposed to be used and weren't, etc. And I'm not trying to, run down any dealers or manufacturers or anything like this. It's, it's regional. It's very specific to a specific locality or dealership or organization. But what I will tell you is, if you are willing to take a little bit of extra time, and I understand for a lot of you, time is money. And I get that. I've been there. I've lived through that period in my life. But if you are willing to take a little bit of extra time, you will have peace of mind in knowing the thing was done right. And if you're honest with yourself and your capabilities and your tools and your facilities, you will know whether you got to the end goal successfully or not. So let's just take a basic fluid change. Brake fluid. There are a lot of you that might be surprised to realize that in the course of your ownership of a bike, and for I understand for a lot of you that might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. For others of us that might be up to 20 years. But brake fluid is hygroscopic. Hygroscopic means that it absorbs moisture. Moisture is water. Water contains oxygen, H2O. H2O is an oxidizer. When you bleed your brakes, you're bleeding out air. So you're bleeding out an oxidizing agent, you're bleeding out air, and a non-performing component. There are people that own a bike their entire ridership, their entire experience with the bike, and never think to bleed the brakes, exchange the brake fluid, basically 1 for 1, purge the entire system. Add to modern bikes anti-lock braking systems. The geezer here has lived through when anti-lock wasn't even on the board, let alone a term, through the modern where we have link braking systems. So you are invested in your personal safety if you take these things into consideration. If you're able to do them yourself, you not only increase your awareness of how the vehicle functions and how frequently these things need to be done, but you have that personal satisfaction and that personal knowledge that every time you mount the bike, everything is as good as it could be. Another case in point is Aftermarket Accessories. So if you've been watching this channel, I love a variety of aftermarket vendors that make a very good product. And I won't name a name, but I'll hold up a couple of examples and tell you that while I loved the overall solution, I didn't like what they provided to get there. And I had to circumvent a few things and, go with soldering in removable connectors and things like that, that they didn't do. They kind of took a couple shortcuts so that every man could get the desired result, but for a certain amount of time. And, and I love Kuryakin, however you want to pronounce it, but I'll hold them up as an example. They're very good at providing a solution that others either don't provide or don't provide as elegantly or as finished a solution as they do, but they take some shortcuts. So like they'll run the wire for this third brake light solution crimped into the freaking crease of a saddlebag or a trunk lid, have a wire hanging out. That is a recipe for disaster. That is eventually going to fail. And I will jump in there and put in a, drill through the tour box or the saddlebag or whatever and put in a waterproof connector and things like that on my own. And some of you, that might be off-putting. You're like, I just want a turnkey solution and I want it done. And again, doubling back to that Anthony Hopkins thing, what one man can do, another can do. If you search YouTube, here's a channel that you're looking at on YouTube. You will find somebody that goes into great detail and tells you how to, solder or do crimp connects or do heat shrink and solder instead of crimp connects and electrical tape, higher quality solutions to get the most out of your installation. And I'll give you a specific case in point, and I don't mean to throw Curry Aiken under the bus by any means. I love their products, I really do. And one is Bad Boy air horns. So here's the stock horn off my 2016 Electra Glide Ultra Classic. And the kit that I got from Bad Boy air horns included a pretty generic, not very efficient relay, and a number of crimp connectors and stuff. And I think from a wiring perspective, the quality of the horn was, above board. I think it was as good as advertised, if not above as advertised. I have used it in extreme heat and extreme cold. The response has been instantaneous. The relay hasn't failed. But where we differed in opinion was their routing of wires and the way the connections were made. And I just am not a proponent of, these giant plastic molded crimp connectors that, can get absorbed. We're here in the mid-Atlantic area, the East Coast. So, I ride year round, so I'll pick up, salt spray and stuff like that, where these crimp connectors can get corroded and things like that. They didn't provide any sort of, solder alternative or anything like that. And I understand they're trying to appeal to the everyman or every woman, as the case may be, and just trying to get you back on the road. But if you're thinking of keeping your two-wheeled vehicle longer than just a couple of years, you might want a slightly more elegant solution. So what I would suggest is that you research a little bit about soldering and heat shrink and, different silicone and Loctites. Loctite is a thread locker compound, so wherever you have a bolt or a nut or a screw, you can put on a red Loctite. And, this may be amazing to some people that don't even have any idea about it, but red Loctite is considered permanent. It is meant to not ever back out unless subjected to severe torque, meaning you're putting a big wrench or screwdriver or something on there, meaning deliberately to torque it back out. And sometimes it can point to failure of the component, meaning you could actually break the nut or the bolt or whatever you're trying to remove, trying to get past that Loctite barrier. There is blue Loctite, which is semi-removable. Loctite is, I think, a brand name of 3M or somebody. But blue Loctite is semi-removable. Hey, I don't want this thing to ever back out on its own, but if I ever need to remove it, I don't need to have Hercules come along with a 6-foot breaker bar hanging off the end of it in order to break it free. I want to be able to get it out. So you're starting to put together the picture that there is an educational barrier to this stuff. But these mind powers cost you nothing other than a few minutes of your time or a few hours of your time assimilating the information and, putting it away or writing something down in a note or typing it into a log and figuring out that, hey, this is something I might need to know in the future. This will pay dividends. You may be somebody that only rides for 15 minutes, 45 minutes, a couple hours on a weekend, a couple days or weekends a month, during the summer months or something like that. And I am not putting you down for that. If that gives you enjoyment, that makes you happy, then good for you. And I'm happy for you. And I've been there at certain points in my life. But if you want to know that you can hop on that bike and go out for 3 or 4 weeks at a time or put the bike in storage for some unforeseen life event for 18 months and pull it back out and not have to worry about anything. These are the sorts of differences in approach that make that scenario much more obtainable. And by that I mean, don't ever think when you take your bike out of winterization, it is the same bike you put away in the fall. If you're somebody that, rides in quote unquote fair weather and, puts the bike in storage in the fall or late early autumn and doesn't bring it out to late spring or early summer. There are a number of things that can change during that period. So not the least of which is, corrosive activities and electrical compromises. There are a number of things that, aftermarket accessories that we discussed a little bit earlier that actually draw power, even when the bike's turned off. And if you haven't had the forethought to put a trickle charger on it, you might come to a early spring day that's unseasonably warm and you want to go ride and you find out the battery's absolutely dead. It's reading, 9 volts or some crazy thing. And, you got a dead cell and you're like, how the hell did this happen? And the reason is something's been drawing on it, all winter long. And, you didn't have it on a trickle charge. Well, how do I get around that? Well, the way you get around that is to know your bike, know your systems, know the aftermarket components that you put on it and what they do. So you can plan ahead and have that trickle charger ready. So what I'm encouraging you to do, the point of this video is get to know your bike. Get to know what its limitations are. So the majority of aftermarket components that are put on a modern bike right now are electrical. So you need to know what your battery capacity is, you need to know what your charging capacity is, and you need to know where that happens over the RPM range, and you need to know where that happens in your normal riding time. So the majority of the time you ride is a highway ride, which means you're basically charging all the time, or is it about town where you're basically just charging most of the time? And that will limit your ability to run a lot of aftermarket, electrical components. And I'll just toss up, additional lighting as an example, but audio obviously is a big draw as well. And that is also a common addition. So the summation here is you can do maintenance on your own bike. You can install aftermarket accessories and components on your own bike if you do a little research and you do a little bit of planning and you take care and you're honest about your capabilities and you're willing to enhance your tool sets. Do not venture into any engagement with your bike, either maintenance, electrical, add-on, changing out handlebars, shocks, whatever, changing the belt or chain or tires or brakes, whatever. If you don't have a decent complementary tool set, if you try and force the issue with what you have on hand, it's usually a recipe for disaster. And some people would say, well, I really don't want to invest a whole lot in tools in a bike that I don't know that I'm necessarily going to have 5, 10, 15 years from now. Chances are what you buy today will be applicable to tomorrow. That wasn't true 10, 15 years ago, but that is probably true today. So I wouldn't let a small investment in tools or materials dissuade you from doing what you're planning on doing. And again, if you decide that after listening to all this, that you're just more comfortable taking it to a dealer or a shop with a reputable reputation, good reviews, current good reviews. Do not feel bad about that. Go ahead and take it there. But if you want to dive in and do some of this stuff yourself, I will tell you that it is an investment in your bike and it is an investment in yourself. Because again, even the best shop has their own agenda. And a lot of times that agenda is taking care of you. There are a number of shops that I like. I have an antique automobile, and there's certain places that I will only take it to do certain things. And there are other things that I just choose to do myself. But at the end of the day, I want to understand what was done, how it was done, why it was done, and what it means now and in the future, so that I can plan and use the vehicle and react accordingly over time. I realize this has been a little bit of a stream of consciousness, and I hope it makes sense to you. I appreciate your comments and your feedback. If you like the video and you think we've earned it, please, give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of this, definitely please subscribe. We appreciate you supporting us in that way. And as always, ride safe. Namaste.